Recycling, a mission-driven.
Florida Live starts now.
Well, welcome into Florida Live. It is about 4 till 2 on this Thursday afternoon. We are starting early, though, today because we want to get you inside this rally for freedom for Venezuela that's happening in Tampa. This is at eSmart Recycling. That is the founder of eSmart Recycling who is speaking right now. You see over his shoulder, he is introducing Senator Rick Scott, who is joining some community leaders from Venezuela who live in Tampa for this rally on a continued fight for freedom and democracy in Venezuela. We know Senator Scott has sponsored some legislation, including the Bolivar Act and the Stop Maduro Act in the Senate that he hopes will hold Nicolas Maduro and his regime accountable. They say that his regime essentially stole the recent election from who they say is the rightful president. So let's go ahead and listen in. Again, this is happening right now in Tampa. Thanks for joining us here on Florida Live a few minutes early.
Many Venezuelans is one of resilience. My parents worked their entire lives to build a future in Venezuela, a country we love. But in 2017, with little more than a suitcase and the hope for safety, they left everything behind. In 2018, I became a U.S. citizen and was finally able to reunite our family. The pain of what was lost still lingers, but it fuels a deep commitment to justice, to democracy, and to the promise of this country. That's why I'm so honored to welcome Senator Scott to our warehouse today. Senator, thank you for being a bold and consistent voice for the Venezuelan people, for standing up when others stayed silent. Thank you for sponsoring acts like the Bolivar Act, the Stop Maduro Act, the Valor Act. These are just not pieces of legislation. They're declarations that our story matters, that freedom matters.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping ensure that the tragedy we lived through is remembered and never repeated, not here and not anywhere. We're honored to have you here today, Senator. Thank you so much.
Bueno, creo que vamos a escuchar al senador y luego va a haber unas intervenciones de algunos de las personas que están acá presentes.
Well, thank you. First off, it's fun to walk into a room like this and just see so many friendly faces. You know, people that I've had the opportunity to get to know over the last 14 years. 8 years as governor and now 6 years in the Senate. And probably the nicest thing I get to do every day is fight for somebody's freedom. You can't imagine that, you don't understand why there's people like Maduro or Diaz-Canel or Castro or Ortega or Petro or people like that. You don't understand, why do they want to take away somebody's freedom, somebody's opportunity, somebody's rights? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And I always told everybody, I love my mom. I really didn't like being told what to do. But I think, why would somebody want to destroy a beautiful country like Venezuela or Cuba or Nicaragua? Any of these countries, they're beautiful places. So it's nice to be here. It's nice to, I feel good that that I have a team. We fight together for liberty and freedom in Venezuela and Cuba and Nicaragua and Colombia, all throughout Latin America, and actually we do it around the world. We fought with the Hong Kong protesters for their basic rights, and now we try to support the people that are being oppressed in Europe, people that are oppressed in Israel.
Welcome into Florida Live. If you're joining us now here on Fox Local Tampa as well, we are taking live this event that's happening live in Tampa, a rally for freedom and democracy for Venezuela. Senator Rick Scott speaking now. Let's listen in.
And they help people get a job. I think the most important thing we all do is get a job, have a purpose, be able to support our families independently. And Tony believes in that dream, is living that dream. I had the opportunity to give him a medal when I was governor, and is well deserved. So, by the way, if you're interested, the governor's a good job. There's an opening in 26. You can go for it. So it's a great job. You can do a lot of good things for people. I want to recognize Ernesto Ackerman. Thank you for what you do. Like if you look at the group of people here, you guys are fighters. You know what you lost. The ones that came here from another country, you know what you lost, and you know how important it is to fight. This is the last hope. If we don't fight for America, if we don't fight for our freedom here, then we can't fight for freedom anyplace else. And freedom is fleeting. We all have to do it. So I want to thank everyone for doing it. I want to thank Ernesto. You've been consistent. You've always doing it. Thank you for what you do. Thank you. Lorenzo, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for your fight. Maria Teresa, we thank you for your fight with Maria Corina. You just can't imagine what she's going through, right? Where her life is at risk every day, and the president-elect Gonzalez. So, but and by the way, it really matters. Doing things like this, it really matters back home. You hear it from people that, whether you hear from Venezuelans from Venezuela or Cubans in Cuba, you hear that when we do things like this, when we stand up for people, it has an impact back home. It actually gives them hope that something good is going to happen. I want to thank Felicia Jimenez and Angel Cristobal. I want to thank Jose Gregorio Matute and Norma. Thank you for always being here. I want to thank the great food that's here that I haven't gotten to taste yet, but I heard it's really good. Bertagon del Sabor and Jessica Cakes Catering. The cakes smell really good too. But here's the deal. I've got a nice title called the U.S. Senator. And with that title, I have the opportunity to focus on whatever I want to focus on. What is very helpful to me is when you guys show up and give me ideas of how I can fight for liberty and freedom, not only here, but also throughout Latin America. So I've got a great team of people. Let's see, Rosa is right here. I think most people know Rosa. So she moved up here from Miami so her husband could finish his education. And then Alex is here somewhere, Alex Ojeda. But Alex and her team are the best constituent services team in the country. They won an award for the best. So, gracias por todo lo que hacen por la lucha por la libertad y la democracia en Venezuela y en toda América Latina. América Machado tiene todo mi apoyo. Ella ha hecho un trabajo increíble, muy difícil, por la lucha por la libertad y la democracia y continúe. No más días de Maduro. Espero que un nuevo día en Venezuela por no más días de Maduro. Trabajando juntos podemos sacar a Maduro y sus matones del poder y finalmente traer un nuevo día de libertad a Venezuela. So as Tony brought up, we have a variety of bills that we're working on to get passed. I'm very optimistic with Donald Trump's support. And by the way, if you don't realize the impact you've had. If you look at the things that Donald Trump is doing, it's because of your voice, right? Because you guys were vocal during the election and you've been vocal since. Every time I talk to President Trump and I talk to Susie Wiles and I talk to people in the White House, I tell them the importance of being vocal and doing the right things. Not allowing oil to flow out of Venezuela, all right? Making sure we hold these terrorist groups accountable and call them terrorist groups and do that. So the more you're vocal, the greater chance. The President of the United States he's got unlimited authority on foreign policy, but your voice is what's going to drive him to always do the right thing. He wants to do the right thing. He's a great president. He's going to do the right thing, but do not let up. Don't let up if you have ideas for me, and don't let up on making sure Donald Trump hears your voice and he hears exactly what you think what ought to happen in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, everywhere in America, in Latin America. If you do that, then the right things are going to happen. So it's nice to be here, and I think, who do I turn back over to?
Yeah.
My friend. By the way, she put together an unbelievable rally down in Miami. When did we do that?
Last year.
Yeah, last year.
I think it was
And it just shows you the energy of people from Latin America that showed up. And it wasn't just people that came from there, but people all over this country came and showed up for the people of Venezuela. And
almost
because
70,000 people we had.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was so, and that has an impact. We just have to keep doing these things.
Yes.
Do not give up. Do not lose hope.
We want. With your help, we want.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
That's Senator Rick Scott speaking at that rally for Venezuelan freedom in Tampa. Coming up next in our Tampa Connection, we are going to hear from Nancy Gay about a water wars warning for high school seniors, what folks need to know with that. Coming up later in the show as well, we are going to hear from a student at FSU who was also a student at Marjory Stoneman Douglas back in 2018 in that shooting. We know there's a group of a couple of dozen students who attend both schools who sent letters to state lawmakers wanting action after the shooting 1 week ago. New questions in the Hope Florida scandal that came out today in a committee meeting in Tallahassee that lasted only about 10 minutes after the witnesses who were expected to testify declined to show up. Also, if you're watching us here on Fox Local in Orlando or on YouTube, we want to let you know that coming up at 3 o'clock, we are standing by for an update from Daytona Beach Police, where they will give an update on a toddler who was hit and killed last night by cars after stepping into traffic while chasing after the family dog that had gotten loose. An absolutely tragic situation in Daytona Beach. We are awaiting an update on that here shortly. Well, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live. Things are just getting started. We are going to take a quick break here, but we will be right back in 2 minutes. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon live on Fox Local, fox13news.com, fox35orlando.com, and also on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Garrett. Well, it's almost the end of the school year, and that means it's time for senior pranks. But one type of senior prank called Water Wars is actually calling attention to law enforcement officers. In fact, just this week in the Bay Area, 2 schools had to call law enforcement and had to lock their doors because of this Water Wars prank. Now, Tampa police responded to an incident at St. Mary's Episcopal School on Monday, and then at Coleman Middle School, which is nearby. That middle school actually went into lockdown because of a reported road rage incident involving a teen who appeared to be carrying a gun and was wearing a mask. Now, police say that that teen was actually a Plant High School senior who was taking part in this Water Wars prank. Plant High School sent a letter home to parents saying that students who create safety concerns on any school campus could face disciplinary action. But in Jacksonville, the sheriff actually put out a warning saying that some participants have gone to great lengths to carry out their game assassinations, which includes playing in the middle of the day or even in the middle of the night. Now, that warning came after an off-duty FDLE agent in Nassau County actually shot a high school student who was hiding on her property before sunrise. That student was injured but will be okay. Police say he was carrying an airsoft gun that had actually been wrapped in masking tape. Now, Tampa police say that their school resource officers have been in contact with school officials to reinforce that these kind of pranks may have been intended as harmless, but they have potentially dangerous consequences. Garrett?
Nancy, this is called Water Wars, but it sounds like it's not always exclusively, we're not just talking about water guns. You said in one case they're airsoft guns as well, which certainly carries a bit more risk to it.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not always using water guns, and that is what law enforcement officers are concerned about, that they are using these airsoft guns, that it's going way beyond a simple little high school prank. And as I mentioned earlier, they are also playing this game sometimes in the middle of the night. That off-duty FDLE agent who shot the high school student, I mean, they were hiding on her property before sunrise. So this is definitely a very dangerous situation. And even though some kids may think, oh, this is a prank, it's my senior year, I'm gonna, play these Water Wars games, it's definitely not a prank. But if you go on TikTok, you can find hundreds and thousands of videos of people playing these Water Wars games. But it's important for students and teenagers to understand that this is not a prank, and it could have very serious consequences. Yeah,
and kind of concerning scenes to see play out in the streets there in some of those videos as well. You're also tracking a story out of Sarasota. What do we know about this?
Yeah, deputies in Sarasota, they're actually searching for a suspect accused of attacking a man with a box cutter. Now, this man was simply walking through his neighborhood on his nightly walk. A.J. Tundo said that he was on his walk when he heard a threatening voice behind him saying he was going to cut his throat. Now, Tundo said that the suspect jumped on him immediately and began attacking him with what he believes was a box cutter. Tundo said the suspect came out of the bushes holding his bicycle in one hand and slashing him with the other. Tundo said that he may have actually encountered this suspect before. He believes that the man is the same person who tried to break into his shed a couple of days earlier. Tundo said that he actually hit the man twice before he got away, and he does believe that this same suspect returned because he was mad that he called 911 when he caught him trying to break into his shed. Tundo said that he is terrified that this suspect will actually kill him and is scared to go out on his nightly walk. Now, after the incident, Tundo did decline medical treatment because he is the primary caretaker for his wife, who is sick. Anyone with information about this suspect or about this incident is asked to call the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. Garrett?
What a frightening situation, especially not to know any sort of reason or anything like that for that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he does believe that this is the same person who tried to break into his shed. But I mean, how terrifying is that? You're on a walk through your neighborhood, which he apparently happened to do regularly, probably every night. And all of a sudden, this guy just threatens you and is just attacking you with a box cutter. And as I mentioned, he is the primary caregiver for his wife who is sick. So he has a lot of stuff going on at the moment. So I just can't imagine how terrifying this is. And hopefully the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office will be able to get some tips and be able to capture this suspect before something else happens. You know, Tundo said that he is terrified that this guy is actually going to kill him.
Yeah, and thankfully he wasn't hurt worse than he was in that situation. Finally, keeping an eye on a story from Manatee County where nearly 24 cats were rescued.
Yes, these 23 cats were actually rescued from a boat in Manatee County. Several people called authorities when they noticed the cats living on board a boat that was docked near Kingfish Boat Ramp. Manatee County Sheriff's Office Marine Unit, as well as the Manatee County Animal Welfare, began to investigate after they started getting these calls. Now, investigators said that these cats were living on this boat by themselves. Their owners did not live on board the boat full time, but they would go and visit the cats daily. Investigators say that the boat had feces and urine on it. The boat was hot, it smelled, and did not have proper ventilation. Animal welfare authorities said that the family had fallen on hard times. It did not have stable housing. And after meeting with the sheriff's office, that the family agreed to surrender the 23 cats. Those cats were given much needed baths and medical care and are now adjusting to life on land. And those 23 cats are going up for adoption. For more information on how to adopt one of these cats, you can log on to fox13news.com. We do have a link within the story so that you can see all the different cats and learn more about ways you can adopt them. Garrett?
Well, I'm sure they will have no trouble finding homes very soon, and much better days ahead for those 23 cats.
Yes, definitely much better days ahead, and hopefully days that we'll have them on land and not in a boat, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa Connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
It's not politics. It's not politics. It's life and death. And our jobs are to move this state in a positive direction and to save lives. And the MSC Public Safety Act saved lives. And there's still much more work that we can do to make sure this doesn't happen again and that more communities don't have to go through what we went through.
That was the plea from a student still processing 2 school shootings that he and others have lived through. It is 1 week since we saw these scenes play out on the campus of Florida State University in Tallahassee. A funeral tomorrow for the South Carolina man killed in that shooting, Piru Chaba, 45 years old, going to be laid to rest tomorrow in Greenville, South Carolina. Robert Morales, 57 years old, has been identified as the other man who was killed. 5 others were shot and injured in that. We know from police that the suspect, 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, is still in the hospital at this time. Here's a live look from Tallahassee on the Florida State University campus this afternoon. There was a large group of students who attended Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland that now attend Florida State University. We've seen them at events at the Capitol this week. More than 24 of them signed on a letter to Governor Ron DeSantis. And this afternoon, I spoke with Logan Rubenstein, who's a junior at FSU and also attended Marjory Stoneman Douglas. He says they are frustrated by attempts to reverse reforms that were passed post-Parkland.
So Thursday was my 21st birthday. And there's a tradition at FSU where the night of, when the clock strikes midnight, when you turn 21, all your friends and family throw you into the fountain. And so, I was able to celebrate that. But I didn't imagine having to wake up on Thursday to what had transpired. I was on my way to work, where I'm interning in the Capitol this semester, and I saw my friend in the parking lot, and we discussed hangover remedies. She told me to get a Chick-fil-A sandwich and, just typical college student things. And then I looked down on my phone and I saw a text from my friend that said, call 911, we're in Bellamy and we're barricading. And it was at that point when I saw 20 police cars race down Pensacola Street on their way to respond to the shooting. And it was at that moment where I was brought back to Parkland. The sirens and the helicopters and, that feeling of there's something happening at my school. And that's happening again. And it's something that no one should have to go through. It's the worst club in America, having to fear that your life may be ended from the threat of gun violence at your place of schooling, and a place that should be for friendship and community and learning and mentorship, but is instead now a place that's reminded all too much of trauma and fear. And it's one that I am entirely too familiar with. I was in 8th grade during the Parkland shooting. I am a proud graduate of Stoneman Douglas High School, and I grew up in Parkland my entire life. And when I was 13 is when the shooting happened back in my hometown. And now my friends here at FSU have to know what that feels like. And it is entirely preventable. It is a failure of our government that this keeps happening, and our so-called leaders are just not doing anything about it. And it's unfortunate, but it keeps happening.
I was going to ask how quickly things kind of went back in your mind to that day in 2018, but it sounds like it was immediate.
Yeah, it was standing there and seeing all of the law enforcement, which I want to thank, FTLE and Tallahassee Police Department, FCPD, and all of the first responders who dropped everything and ran to the scene. It could have been a lot worse on Thursday, and I want to thank law enforcement for the response. But hearing those sirens and helicopters and the seriousness of the situation, it was immediate. It was immediate. And I'm thinking back to that moment. So I'm a twin brother. My brother also, went to Stoneman Douglas. And he also goes to FSU, and I'm very fortunate to have him here. And my first thought was, oh my God, is Evan okay? 12 hours earlier, we were with all of our loved ones, celebrating life and each other, and being a college kid. And my first thought was, this is happening again, and where is Evan? And then immediately, started getting the texts confirming if I was safe, where are you? And checking on other, friends here on campus, calling people. And it's just, it is so, it's interesting because for me, this isn't my second time. And with that, there's good and bad. Because I know what to expect, and I know how these things go. And I know, in the immediate moments, no one can really train you for it, but there is a certain level of experience that is helpful. It's terrible that I've had to do this twice, but I was able to, quickly respond and stay in contact with, group chats and friends, and try to, help people in the moment.
Logan, I know there are a number of Marjory Stoneman Douglas students who attend Florida State University currently and are going through this in similar ways that you are, and dealing with probably some of those same feelings. I'm curious if you've been in contact with some others.
I have.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of MSD kids who now go to FSU, and we with March for Our Lives, we put together a letter of MSD and FSU students to call on action from the governor and the legislature to, stand with our students and to implement some pretty direct policy goals. But we also have been in contact. Some of my good friends are still from back home, and this last week I've just been spending time with friends and family, and telling people I love them, and just trying to spend as much time as I can with my loved ones. It's also it was also my birthday, so it's definitely a different birthday, but trying to just focus on the friendships and spending with people. And so some of my good friends are from Parkland. We've also been organizing a group of us, with that letter, and some of us have been getting more engaged in this moment. But yeah, there's a formidable population of kids who now have to go through their second shooting, and it's the worst thing in the world.
Logan, you talk about the letter. Bottom line for me, what you want state leaders to take away from that, and what action you want to see.
Sure. So in that letter, which is signed by 28 students who graduated from Stoneman Douglas and FSU, we're calling on DeSantis and the legislature to do three things. Number one, that's to commit to not lowering the age to buy a firearm. The shooter at my high school and now my universities were both under the age of 21. And this session, the legislature, for the third time now, has passed a bill in the House to lower the minimum age to buy a firearm. And that law has worked. And we need to commit to not reversing some of the good policy that was done after Parkland. Number two, we need to pass laws that require safe storage in the state. The shooter at my university on Thursday was able to get his mother's weapon. And that was because we don't have safe storage laws in this country, in this state, and overall in this country, but primarily in this state. And then number three, we need to invest in mental health for students, and particularly for universities. There's a lot of things that happened in the aftermath of Thursday. And there's a lot of chaos with the security protocols for universities, with doors not locking at Florida State. And there's a lot of more work that we can be doing to secure our schools, not just K through 12, but also for our universities. And I do believe that a lot of the chaos that we saw on Thursday was because of that lack of investment from our leaders.
Meanwhile, we are tracking breaking news here on Florida Live. This is a live look in Miami-Dade County, courtesy WSVN in Miami, where a shooting suspect is dead, according to reporting from WSVN, after at least 4 people were reportedly shot in a warehouse shooting there in the southwest part of Miami-Dade County. This happened around 1 o'clock this afternoon, 7300 block of Southwest 45th Street. We know a number of law enforcement agencies are on the scene there. WSVN reported seeing many of these people escorted out of those warehouses with their hands raised. You see them standing in a line there, many of them with their hands still up. You see a number of officers with tactical gear, canine officers, as well, heavy police presence in that area. Again, still very active scene. Authorities there in South Florida urging folks to avoid that area while this is still going on. Again, WSVN reporting at least 4 people reportedly shot. They do not know the extent of their injuries at this time, but the suspect in this shooting has been reported dead. WSVN citing anonymous sources for that. We will continue to monitor this for any updates. An official word from Miami-Dade Police and the Sheriff's Office there. So we're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. A planned 4-hour hearing into Hope, Florida this morning in Tallahassee ended after just 10 minutes. That's because the 2 witnesses who were expected today to testify ended up not showing up. And this was the 3rd meeting of the House Healthcare Budget Subcommittee looking into Hope, Florida, and specifically that $10 million donation from a Medicaid settlement to the Hope Florida Foundation that ended up in the hands of 2 political committees fighting Amendment 3. That is the initiative that was on the ballot last November to legalize marijuana, legalize recreational marijuana here in the state of Florida. Today, in the absence of testimony, we heard from Representative Alex Andrade, a Republican from Pensacola, who's the chair of this subcommittee and has been leading this probe, who said there was no question these were Medicaid funds steered by the governor's chief of staff, James Uthmeyer, who's now the Attorney General, to his own political action committee. Some strong words today as Representative Andrade outlined the findings of the subcommittee so far and criticized the governor's lack of concern about it.
Quorum is present. Chair Andrade.
Declining. All right, members, thank you all for being present. Before we begin, please make sure that all cell phones and other communication devices are turned off or on silent. Members, before we begin what appears to be a very short meeting today, I think it would be helpful to review what we've discovered over the course of the past 2 committee meetings and in reviewing the records that we do have available to us at this point. First, on December 28th, 2021, the state entered into a contract with the law firm of Liston & Dees to assist them in obtaining restitution from the managed care company Centene over a nationwide dispute related to their pharmacy benefit management program. Beginning in February of 2022, James Uthmeyer met with representatives from Centene on at least 3 separate occasions to discuss the state's claim and the possibility of settlement with Centene. On February 7th, 2023, attorneys for Centene sent a letter to Liston & Dees outlining why they believed that a settlement in the amount of $67,048,611 would be fair for both parties. Within their letter, Centene identified the different lines of services in Florida for which the state may have had a claim. Included in those lines of service were Florida Healthy Kids, Medicaid, Medicare Part D, Centurion, and Florida's health insurance exchange plans. It appears from the letter that Centene did not believe they were liable for any damages to the state for any lines of service other than Florida Healthy Kids. On March 16, 2023, the state notified Liston & Dees that it would be terminating their agreement and handling the claim against Centene in-house. Then, due in part to the fact that we have not received any documentation from any state agencies or the Attorney General's office to this point, it appears that nothing happened on this claim for over a year until September of 2024. That appearance of inactivity is further bolstered by the fact that on September 27th, 2024, the state and Centene executed a settlement agreement for the exact same amount proposed by Centene in February of 2023, $67,048,611. Notably, the state removed the claims of Florida Healthy Kids from the final settlement. Unlike every other state in the country, no announcement was made by ACA or the governor's office informing the public of this settlement. The lack of an announcement is not the only aspect of this settlement that is unique solely to Florida and also suspect. After reviewing several other state settlement agreements, it appears that Florida is the only state to direct a portion of their settlement amount to a charity, let alone a charity spearheaded by a governor's spouse. As you are all aware, sometime in early October of 2024, Centene wired $10 million to DCF's direct support organization, the Hope Florida Foundation, a foundation which, up to that point, had only raised $2 million and had never issued a grant greater than $50,000. From the testimony we heard last week, no one at DCF was notified of this transfer, and the foundation was not consulted prior to the transfer being made. On October 11th, James Uthmeyer, identifying himself as the governor's chief of staff, cold called Amy Rosenhausen, the executive director of Save Our Society from Drugs. On that call, Uthmeyer informed Ms. Rosenhausen that the Hope Florida Foundation had resources available that he told her could be used in their mutual campaign against Florida's Amendment 3 ballot initiative. This is significant because the board of the Hope Florida Foundation itself had not yet been informed that they had received this $10 million wire transfer. It appears that Uthmeyer had a similar conversation with Secure Florida's Future's executive director, Mark Wilson, who happens to also be the executive director CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Because on October 13th, Josh Hay, the chair of the Hope Florida Foundation's board, received an unsolicited request for $5 million from Mark Wilson and Frank Walker. This was about 24 hours before the board meeting where Hay informed the board that the foundation would be giving Mr. Wilson the grant he requested the day prior. If you recall, Mr. Hay testified under oath that it was Jeff Aaron, the board's attorney, who informed him before their October 14th meeting that this grant was deemed beneficial to the governor's office and who assured him that this should be done. As you will also recall, it was Mr. Aaron who told Mr. Hay on October 14th to obtain permission from the board to issue grants without prior board approval or oversight. I find this concerning because, as you can see in our packet, Jeff Aaron became legal counsel for the foundation on October 14th. 4 days after the board meeting, on October 18th, Amy Rosenhausen sent Jeff Aaron a nearly identical, unsolicited request for $5 million. And on October 22nd, with the help of Jeff Aaron, $5 million was wired out of the foundation's account and directed to save our society from drugs. From his text messages with Ms. Rosenhausen, Mr. Aaron misled Ms. Rosenhausen into believing that this grant was being given with the full approval of the entire foundation's board. This was impossible because the board was never informed of her request. Between October 17th and October 29th, Secure Florida's Future, an arm of the Florida Chamber of Commerce, transferred $3.75 million to James Uthmeyer's political committee, Keep Florida Clean. Between October 23rd and October 28th, Save Our Society from Drugs transferred $4.75 million to the same political committee controlled by Uthmeyer. These amounts far exceed the Hope Florida Foundation's permitted limits on expenditures for lobbying, let alone campaign activities. In response to these revelations, Mr. Uthmeyer and ACA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, have embarked on a disinformation campaign. Mr. Uthmeyer expects us to believe that he had no knowledge of the settlement terms, despite his heavy involvement since 2022 in the negotiations. The fact that he would have had to permit ACA to execute this settlement as the governor's chief of staff, the fact that no public announcement ever occurred related to this settlement, and the fact that he personally informed Ms. Rosenhausen of the location of these funds. Similarly, regarding the letter that I received from ACA's attorney this week, I'll note that it does not mention the FMAP share amount that has already been reported to CMS, or the fact that no other state, nor CMS itself, agrees with his legal interpretation. Simply put, there's no question that these were Medicaid funds, steered by the governor's chief of staff through secret and clandestine actions to his own political committee. Members, I want to thank you all for your engagement and encouragement these past several weeks. As policymakers, it's readily apparent that a culture of neglect, incompetence, and entitlement exists within the halls of the governor's office at this time. The purpose of these meetings has been to obtain the information necessary for us to frame our decisions as the legislature. When the executive exhibits no care or concern for the misuse of taxpayer dollars, we as the legislature have an obligation to everyday Floridians to be even more vigilant. We're not judges or prosecutors. While I'm firmly convinced that James Uthmeyer and Jeff Aaron engaged in a conspiracy to commit money laundering and wire fraud, and that several parties played a role in the misuse of $10 million in Medicaid funds, we as legislators will not be the ones making the ultimate charging decisions. We're here today to hear from two 501c4 groups about their own interactions, and I had hoped to learn more facts and details about what occurred. However, after today, regardless of how quickly we conclude this meeting, I believe our work on this topic in this capacity as a subcommittee will be concluded. As you will note, neither Ms. Rosenhausen nor Mr. Wilson are here today. They both, minutes prior to this meeting, declined our invitation. Ms. Rosenhausen stated that she was concerned about giving up privileges and legal liabilities. I have not read Mr. Wilson's letter declining our invitation. However, I will note to any member of the Florida Chamber of Commerce that it does appear from everything indicated by Mr. Wilson that they were complicit and had full knowledge of what they were doing in the misuse of these Medicaid funds. I would be extremely concerned as the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Members, before we conclude, I'll open it up for comments. If anyone has a comment or a question. Seeing no comment. Representative Redonda moves to rise. This meeting is concluded.
So that was the House Healthcare Budget Subcommittee earlier today. Shortly after that meeting concluded, the governor and the first lady held a news conference in St. Augustine to talk about Hope Florida and its mission. And you also heard from some recipients of help from that organization. During the question and answer portion of that news conference, a reporter did ask about AHCA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, and the $10 million donation to Hope Florida as well. And this is what the governor said in response.
So AHCA put out the letter with all the documentation. So I would just look at that. It totally debunks the bogus media narratives that were out there. AHCA had to do this. They did it appropriately, and it advanced the policies of the state of Florida. And I think those were very important documents to see.
Do you have a response, though, to those lawmakers that are still, trying to ask those questions about just the support?
So the documents that AHCA put out, they were told this was coming. Partisan journalists were told this was coming, and they still tried to produce these phony narratives. Then the documents came out, and it showed basically what was done by AHCA, how they negotiated it, and it also even had the documents from the company. So that debunks the phony narrative. Why are they doing the narrative? They're not doing it because they really care about that. They're doing it to try to impugn Hope Florida. They're trying to smear this program. Some of them, some of these lefty journalists don't like it. They don't like you working with the faith-based community. Some of these people, view it as a way to attack the First Lady and all the great things she's done because they view her as a threat. So that's what's motivating this. And so the reality is this has done an enormous amount of good, and I'm proud of the program, soup to nuts.
So you also heard earlier from Representative Alex Andrade basically saying that the House had kind of done what it can. That subcommittee had done what it could in looking into and probing into Hope Florida, and that its work on this session had come to a close, but that these questions will certainly persist. Before we go to break here, I wanted to go ahead and give us an update as we take another live look in Miami-Dade. This is Southwest Miami-Dade, a warehouse shooting that injured several people, according to WSVN, and that's where we're getting this live image as well. Several people shot, 4 people, according to reporting from WSVN. The suspect is also believed to be dead after being shot by police. This is a warehouse in the 7300 block of Southwest 45th Street. Happened around 1 o'clock this afternoon. You can see a number of investigators still on the scene clearing this. Earlier, when we first took this image, you could see a line of people who WSVN reported had been escorted out of some of those buildings there with their hands up. Some had said they had been frisked, even questioned by officers on the scene as well. There is still a heavy police presence. You can see many of the doors to vehicles there are open, I would imagine, as investigators go to clear this scene and make sure everything is safe. Authorities still urging folks in that area to avoid the area. Still not a whole lot of details, but again, WSVN is reporting, citing anonymous sources, that the shooter is dead after several people shot at this warehouse complex. Looks like several kind of buildings in that area in Southwest Miami-Dade. So something we are continuing to monitor this afternoon here on Florida Live. We're going to go ahead and take a break, but we'll be right back in 2 minutes. Live look right now in Green Bay, Wisconsin, ahead of the NFL Draft Round 1 kicking off tonight. This is a live look at the Draft Pavilion in Green Bay, outside Lambeau Field, home of the Green Bay Packers. All this week, we've been previewing the NFL Draft, what it means for the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Miami Dolphins, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We also know there are a number of prospects from Florida colleges and universities, from Florida high schools, that could get their name called as soon as tonight. We talked with Tim Walters, who's the sports editor of the Florida Times-Union and Florida Today, to break down the prospects for Florida's top players.
So let's first start with the first round. And of course, we're going to talk about two different types of connections to Florida. One is those who go to Florida's colleges and universities, and one is those who are homegrown high school products here. And in some cases, you got a player who's both. So we start at the very top of the draft. Of course, Cam Ward, the University of Miami quarterback, he was a Heisman finalist, and he was a transfer to Miami last year. And he almost went to the NFL last year, almost entered the draft. And I don't think he would have gone very high because there were 6 quarterbacks taken off the board pretty quickly last year. This year, I think he's going to go number 1 overall to the Titans. I would be incredibly surprised if they didn't do that. I mean, look, they could take Travis Hunter, but I don't think Will Levis is the answer there in Tennessee. I think the Browns would love to see Cam Ward fall to number 2, but I don't think that that's going to happen. So I think you're going to see Cam Ward from the University of Miami go number 1. Now, number 2 very well could be Travis Hunter. He's actually from the Palm Beach area. So even though he played for Colorado, played for Deion Sanders, played at Jackson State before that, he's a guy who comes from South Florida. He won the Heisman. He's a 2-position player. Some people actually think that there are teams that might trade up to try and get him, including the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5. So we'll see what happens. But, 2 guys with Florida ties could go in the top 2. Then there's Ashton Genty, the superb running back from Boise State. A lot of people don't know he's from Northeast Florida. He was born in Jacksonville, and again, with the Jaguars with the number 5 overall pick, could consider taking him, even though I think they're going to go with a defensive player. But you have Ashton Genty, who is from the Jacksonville area. Other notable players that could go in the first round, you have Tyler Booker, the offensive guard from Alabama, who also went to IMG Academy. And, he's projected a little bit further down, maybe around, 15 to 18. You could see him maybe go to Seattle. He was an All-American last year. So you've got Tyler Booker. And then also, if you're looking in the first round, you've got Jalen Walker, who he's from Florida as well. And played for Georgia last year, and he could go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that's the first round. Now, if you want to look at guys who are from Florida, so there's the wide receiver from Miami, Xavier Restrepo. He's also from Deerfield Beach. And of course, he had a career year last year for the University of Miami with Cam Ward throwing to him. A little bit undersized. We'll see, where he could get taken. Maybe he ultimately becomes an undrafted free agent. But I think you're going to see a club take a chance on him somewhere. From the University of Central Florida, right here in Orlando, the running back, R.J. Harvey out of Edgewater. Now, he'll probably be, maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick. I've seen him mocked up in a few different places, including, again, the Jaguars, who have 10 picks. So you're going to see a lot of things out of them. But he had a great season last year. Overall in his career, he had 47 touchdowns. And I loved watching R.J. Harvey play. He was just a good guy, good movement, good speed, good power. So, he's a good one. Also out of UCF, you've got Mac McWilliams. He went to Pine Forest, which is a school over on the east coast of Florida. And he started his career at UAB, finished up at UCF. And I think he had a lot of tackles. He was a tackling machine. So I think he's a good one to look for there in the draft. Out of the University of Florida, a player who also went to Miami Palmetto, that's Jason Marshall Jr., and he started 7 games last year, had a season-ending injury, but he had 4 pass breakups, 3 quarterback hurries, and limited play. So it shows you he can get to the quarterback and he was a cornerback actually, so he was good. Then right down the street from where I live, actually, just about 10 minutes north of where I am, you have Raheem Sanders. He went to Rockledge High School right here in Brevard County where I am. He started his career at Arkansas. He was great in high school, by the way. I saw him play a couple of times. And then last year, he played for South Carolina. And I think he's going to be a highly touted running back because he's got a lot of upside. Just a couple more to mention. From Florida State, a Gadsden County graduate, Joshua Farmer. He earned honorable mention for the All-ACC team. Again, he had a lot of tackles, Florida State had a lot of tackling to do last year, so he was one of the guys who was actually doing that. And then you've got Jalen Rivers, who played at Miami. He was an offensive tackle out of Oakleaf. He's going to be a good one. And so, this draft is filled with a lot of great players. And I think the last one I'll mention is, former University of Florida player. He played for Georgia last year, is the brother of Jaguars' current running back, Travis Etienne, and that is Trevor Etienne. So you could see him go off the board in the 3rd or 4th round, somewhere in that neighborhood. So just a lot of really good players with ties to Florida. And I could probably name many, many more, but I think I'll stop there for you.
We are tracking some breaking news here. This is the news conference expected from Daytona Beach Police talking about the child, the 1-year-old, hit and killed last night by cars. Let's go ahead and listen in as this news conference starts a little bit early. If you're watching us here on Fox Local Orlando, we will see this through to its completion.
2003 Honda CRV. That impact caused him to go into the southbound lanes, where the secondary impact was with a 2012 Chevy Silverado pickup truck. So 2 vehicles struck the minor, really right on top of each other. Officers arrived. Obviously, it was a very traumatic and chaotic scene, significant injuries. He was transported by Volusia County EMS to Halifax Hospital, where he was pronounced deceased about an hour later by the attending doctors there. It's still an open investigation. We have full cooperation from the drivers of the motor vehicles that were involved and with the parents. And again, just at this point, preliminarily, seems to be just a very tragic accident that we're having to work through here and help the family get through. So that pretty much concludes my prepared statement. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
And so the drivers, you said, remained on scene and cooperated?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Everybody remained on scene. We were able to get everybody's information. And as we move through the investigation, we'll see where that leads. But at this point, just appears to be a very tragic accident.
So do you have any idea how fast they were going?
Do not at this time. Nope, we're still working through that stuff.
What about indications of any distractions or alcohol?
Still preliminary. We don't have any indications of that right now. But as we progress through the investigation portion of it, if those things are revealed, obviously we'll do the proper things.
Was the dog hit as well?
To my knowledge, no, the dog was not hit, just the child.
The neighbors we spoke with at the scene complained of excessive speed on that road. Are you planning to put in any kind of new signage or any kind of traffic study to address that?
Not at the moment. Obviously, if we have speed complaints, our traffic unit is very active, and we'll apply resources out there if we need to. I'm not aware of any speeding complaints that are across my desk at the moment, but certainly we'll react to those as we need to with our traffic unit.
Where were the parents?
From my understanding, the father was working on a sprinkler system in the yard. I don't know where the mom was at. Obviously, he was a little distracted doing some work out there, and it just transpired the way it did.
So was the child playing outside?
I don't think so. I think he kind of followed the family pet who was inside. Apparently, the family pet can open the door in some way, shape, or form. So the little boy followed him outside after that.
Without assigning any kind of particular, obviously, blame here, is there some kind of general word of advice you could give to parents out there who'd be watching this, about just making sure?
I don't want to hold anybody accountable for what they did or didn't do last night. Obviously, all of us, or those of us that are parents, we know that little kids are quick and fast, and it didn't just be that quick. And I can guarantee you they're dealing with some major trauma today. So obviously, if anything were to come out on the investigative side, we would take whatever measures were necessary, but we're not seeing any indication of that at the moment.
A little boy or a
little boy?
It's a residential area.
Correct.
Is there anything you want to let drivers know, especially since neighbors have been complaining about speeding?
I hate to look at our 2 motor vehicle operators last night. There's no indication that excessive speed was involved. We're talking about a 1.5-year-old child. It's 8:21 p.m. It's dusk. Tough to see. Just this whole mix of things just came together in a really tragic turn of events last night, I think is the best way to categorize it right now, pending the investigation.
How tough would this work for the officers who had to respond?
It was tough. So our watch commander last night had a critical incident stress debriefing with the police officers that were on scene last night. We have crisis negotiators that came in and spoke with our officers. We're going to meet with them tonight. The captain and myself, who runs the district, and we'll meet with them tonight and help them through this. Is tough. I mean, this is what police officers do, but all of them, or not all of them, but a majority of them are parents as well. So you're trying to deal with this trauma, knowing that you've got the same situation home. It's just really hard for them to deal with, and we want to be responsive to their mental health needs, obviously. So we're going to do everything we can for them. Any other questions?
Is there anything the community is doing for the family?
I'm not aware of anything at the moment, and certainly if it comes about, I'm sure we'll know. But at the moment, no, not that I'm aware of.
No lights in that area, right? No street lights?
Well, I don't know the extent of the illumination of the roadway right now. I was not there, and I haven't been there in a while. Obviously, we're just a little bit north of Plaza, which has a traffic signal there. There is some traffic lights or some street lighting in the area there, but in that particular block, it's just about a block north of Plaza. I'm not quite sure about the lighting at the time.
And where they live is that, I know it's just south of Ormond Beach.
Correct.
Do they live technically in Ormond?
No, the residence was in Daytona Beach. The final rest for one of our vehicles was inside the city limits of Ormond Beach, though.
He was transported via ambulance, not helicopter?
No, he was taken by ground to Halifax Hospital, correct.
And you said 1.5-year-old, was his birthday coming up?
September-ish. So, yeah, about a year and a half. Anything else? Thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here.
Bill Rhodes, Director of Operations with the Daytona Beach Police Department, giving an update there on a tragic situation out of Daytona Beach where a one-year-old boy, we just learned, hit and killed after stepping into traffic, being hit by two cars last night. Happened shortly before 8:30 last night. Police say they believe the toddler was chasing after the family dog that had gotten out of the house, had gotten loose. They say this appears at this point to be just a tragic accident. The drivers remained on scene and cooperated. No indication that they were driving any faster than they should. You heard police talk about the difficulty of visibility at that time as well. Also, no indication of any potential for charges against the parents or anything like that as well, according to indications from police at this point in the investigation. But again, what police are calling a tragic accident, the death of a one-year-old boy, about 1.5 years old. They said his birthday would have been, his second birthday would have been in September, hit and killed after stepping into traffic last night in Daytona Beach. Well, we're going to continue to follow up on this story. Fox 35's Matt Preza at that news conference, and we'll have more details coming up later. We will also go ahead and wrap up here on Florida Live, but we'll be back at 4 with another live hour of Fox 35 News Plus, so you can keep it right here on Fox Local.